somebody like me.
Hello there everybody and welcome to today's video, and today we're finally going to be doing some testing on our Sony PSX and testing our Matrix Infinity installation that we did in the last part of part 7. And if you've not seen that, if you want to click the card in the top corner right now, that will take you to the relevant video so you can watch that. So today we're going to be doing a quick test. We've formulated a quick test plan. We'll show you that on the screen right now very quickly. So the first thing we're going to test is ultimately whether it powers on to standby and we get the red light. So by default it will do a power on self test. If it finds anything amiss, it will flash red and green where the standby light is, so that detects a fault and basically the machine will refuse to start while that's present. So what we want to make sure is that we get the red standby light, there's no flashing red and green, and of course that our hard disk drive spins up and seeks correctly. If you remember, we also replaced some capacitors on the power supply because that was causing some issues with our hard drive spinning up correctly and it was causing the XMB to fail to load. So we want to make sure we get a nice clean startup and that everything's happy. Also, we'll make sure that there's no magic smoke released because of course that would be that would be terrible. So let's hope that's not the case. Providing that's okay, then we'll proceed to doing a system startup to XMB. So that's just a basic power up to make sure that the XMB does indeed start and load. So again, remember when we did those capacitors, we said there was a cold boot issue, and this machine has been sat on my desk now for a couple of weeks. So you know, this will be a good test for that to make sure that the XMB does indeed load now from a cold boot. Providing that's good and we get a basic startup and shutdown, that basically tells us that the basic system functionality is good. We can proceed to doing a system startup to the Infinity config manager, and basically what we want to test there is that the options can be configured and we want to make sure that those settings can be saved. And providing that's good, then we can proceed to testing games. And we're going to do some basic tests today. We want to make sure that our PAL original games load, and that's obviously CD and DVD. So the console will regard those as imports because of course this is a Japanese NTSC-J spec machine. So we want to make sure that now our PAL original games can indeed launch. And we're going to be testing that from the XMB as nature intends. Now that will involve our DVD burner laser being in good serviceable condition. I suspect that isn't the case. Remember in step 1 we tested this and I was expecting some form of region protection to kick in, but that didn't happen. There was nothing on the screen. It was almost as if the thing didn't know a disc was in there, and consequently that's what I expect today. So I expect that test will probably fail. Of course if it's successful then we'll test backups, PS1 CD and of course DVD video. Might as well test the lot if everything's working, but as I say, I suspect test 4 is going to fail. And indeed if it does, then that confirms to us that it wasn't region protection stopping the thing from working, it was in fact a dead DVD burner laser. As I said before, I expect that's the case because the ticking and clicking from the drive didn't sound very good and was indicative of a bad laser. Now of course that will confirm that today if that fails, and that's bad because the PSX uses that laser to detect a disc and its type, and it will only hand over control to the PS2 side of the hardware if it detects that disc is a PlayStation title. Of course if that laser is knackered, that can never happen because it just can't tell what sort of disc is in there. So if the PSX detects a PlayStation title, it hands over to the second laser, which is a standard PS2 FAT KHS400C pickup. Remember, there's 2 lasers in this thing, but no matter how good your KHS400C PlayStation laser is, if that burner laser can't detect the disc, it can never hand over to the other laser, so it will never read, which is a bit of a bummer. But there is a way around it. If that is indeed the case, then we can use FreeMcBoot to boot the PSX. And basically what that will do is that will force the machine to start up in PS2 mode. So it will bypass that initial disk check because the thing is already in PS2 mode. It will obviously only ever use the KHS400C whilst it's in PS2 mode. So because we can force that to boot into PS2 mode, we can then make sure that it's our KHS400C that's doing all the work, which means that if our burner laser is knackered, it doesn't matter. We can still test the PlayStation functionality and our Infinity. Of course, if that also fails, then it means we have a bad KHS400C laser too, which, yeah, would be quite unfortunate and would mean we've got another laser to replace, but hopefully that's not the case. So without further ado, let's get on to the first test. Let's make sure we get that red standby light and our hard disk drive seems happy. So we'll throw the switch, and we get the red light. Yep, lovely. So the disc spins up and seeks. We'll just listen for it ticking away in the back. Yep, there we go. So that's normal. That's normal behaviour. Let's hit the power button. Let's fire it up. We get the Matrix logo. That's good. And yes, PSX logo. Excellent. So everything looking good so far. I've rolled the audio off because the static will deafen you. Normally you'd have a TV image at this point from the input, but obviously we don't have anything hooked up. And we've got the orb there in the top right corner shimmering away. That basically tells us it's loading, so we'll wait for that to disappear. Just take a little while, but there you go. So we'll get rid of that static. We'll just hop down to system settings. For some reason that then puts this nice background over the image at the back there. So everything seems fine. We can navigate everything we need to. We can see the saves in the OPL folder on the hard drive. Everything looks good. Yep, all scrolling along. Icons are where they should be. Looks good. So let's try and shut it down. Make sure we get a nice clean shutdown as well. Yes, and we do. Back to the red standby light. Looks good. So let's try and get into Infinity Config Manager. We'll hold triangle and circle on the controller whilst we start the machine, and there we go. Moving to the menu, the options are available. So we'll just do some quick config here. We'll turn the PS2 screen fix off for now. We can always toggle that later on. We'll just see what this thing can do with it off. Multi-disc on, MC patch I don't use. I'm going to turn 8-add auto patch off. That's basically in relation to the hard drive. I don't really want it to fiddle with anything on there for now, so we'll turn it off. DVD region to 2. Pad detect time. We'll turn that down so it doesn't delay boot. And yes, indeed we can save the settings. So to press reset, we don't have a reset button of course, so we'll just press and hold power. Wait for this to go back into standby. There we go. So we should now be able to power this back up. And hopefully this should start back up okay. So, onto disk testing, and we'll save you the static. So, a PAL copy of Max Payne, PS2 DVD original. So, we'll listen out for the laser here. Doesn't sound good. The clicking and the ticking is not what it should be doing at this point. It should have detected the disc by now and started to spin it up. You can't hear it spin. It's struggling trying to focus on the disc. Yeah, now it's just going to loop back round and retry. We'll give it a fair shot. We'll eject that. And we'll go with CD. So again, PAL PS2 original CD. This is Half-Life. So there's two separate diodes, one for CD, one for DVD, so you may get one work and not the other. But this doesn't sound much better than the DVD, does it? Nah, it's doing the same. We'll fail that. Okay, so our early testing then is a bit of a mixed bag. So the good news is we did get our power on standby light. Our hard drive did spin and seek correctly, and of course it did allow us to start up successfully to XMB, most importantly from a cold boot. So that's good. That tells us that basically we haven't upset anything, nothing's knackered, and of course that hopefully our capacitor fix on the power supply has done the trick with the hard drive. We did manage to start up to the Infinity Config Manager. We were getting the Matrix logo on boot. We could configure options, and indeed we could save them also. So that was a positive. On the downside, of course, our step 4 test, which we kind of suspected was going to fail, indeed did. So our PS2 original DVD didn't load, and neither did our PAL original CD. So there's 2 diodes in that laser, one for CD, one for DVD, and it looks like both are knackered. So in conclusion then, our DVD burner laser requires replacement. So there's only one thing to do. Let's crack out FreeMac Boot and let's test that KHS400C. So we'll stick our FreeMac Boot memory card in then. Hopefully this can rescue us. Shut the machine down, because of course when we reboot it, FreeMac Boot will cause it to boot into PS2 mode, bypassing our burner laser, and hopefully then we can test our KHS400C. So Max Payne then, original PS2 PAL DVD. So this is effectively an import at this point. So it spins up, we get those 2 quick bips, and there we go, we're booted. Don't mind the capture card flickering about a little bit. Audio sounds good there, no choppiness in the video or the audio. Again, capture card buggering about, it'll sort itself out in a sec. There we go. I am working on a better solution than what I've got at the moment. You'll be seeing that in a video in the not too distant future. Everything looks like it's playing really nicely though. FMV's nice and smooth, audio's good. Drive sounds normal, it's not making any horrible noises. It's not ticking, it's not clicking. So we'll allow it to load. Again, everything sounds normal. So we'll just go into the tutorial, just make sure the game itself loads. Laser still sounds fine. Okay, so we're into the game itself. Textures look good. Again, not hearing anything from the drive that's out of the ordinary. Yeah, cool, that's working fine. So, our KHS400C laser, as far as DVD is concerned anyway, seems to be working fine. So, we'll eject that. Time to go with CD then. What happens when we insert this? So again, PAL spec UK copy of Half-Life, original PS2. So we'll use the quick game switch to reset. Bit of a pause there before it started, but it has now booted. Now whether that's something in relation to the drive or theme at boot, I'm not sure. It didn't sound like it was spinning or doing anything. It's almost as if it was waiting for something. But now it started, it sounds fine, and it booted quickly when it did start, so I'm suspecting it's some sort of background process. So we'll kill the noise from the drive and listen to the audio. So the FMV on the menu looks fine, audio sounds fine, it's not choppy, it's nice and smooth, continuous, so that's good. So let's try and start a game here then. So we'll just listen to the laser. Sounds fine. So here we go with the FMV.
Transit system. This automated train is provided for the security
Audio video look good.
Of the Black Mesa Research Facility personnel.
So our KHS 400C looks pretty good.
8:47 a.m.
With originals at least. So the next job is to test backups and to make sure it reads those recordable discs just as well as it reads the original pressed ones. So we'll eject Half-Life and we'll go back to our PS2 DVD with Max Payne. So this is a recordable disc. Obviously this is just taken off our PAL original. So we'll reboot. Again, 2 quick beeps there for disk authentication. Everything sounds fine. And we're booted. Nice quick boot as well. Laser sounds fine. Again, no clicking, ticking, funny noises. Let's listen to the audio. Oh, looks good there. Bloody capture card. But as you can see now it's sorted its life out. Video, audio, all looks and sounds fine. So we'll remove this and we'll stick Half-Life in. There we go. Again, taken from the same Half-Life disc we've just used. Again, there's a little pause. But once it does start to try to read it, it sounds fine and it boots really quickly. So that gap there, I'm assuming, is something that Theme at Boot is doing. The only way to find that out, of course, is to get that burner laser working it and get it into XMB and repeat the test, which of course we will be doing shortly. Let's listen to the audio. Sounds fine. Again, FMV in the menu looks good. Audio sounds good. Call that a success, I think. So we'll eject that, power off, and we'll call that a day. So what have we learnt there then? Our PSX KHS400C test results look good. We've managed to get a PS2 DVD and CD PAL original, both booting nicely, and we've also managed to get backups, again taken from the same two discs, working absolutely fine as well. It's interesting there's that little delay on CD. It doesn't sound like it's doing anything at all, and then after around 5-6 seconds or so the process then kicks in, the disc then starts to load, it starts to spin up, and then once it does that it's absolutely fine, which makes me think there's some sort of background process going on there perhaps. The only way to find that out, of course, is to replace that burner laser and try to repeat those tests in XMB with that laser working to see if that delay is still present. So in conclusion then, we can say that our KHS400C laser is fully operational. We may need to clean or tweak the pots for CD depending on if that delay continues, but once it's actually up and running it seems to be absolutely fine. And C, of course, now we know that our KHS400C laser is working. That tells us that our LA6508 driver IC is also in functional condition. So in order to keep it that way, I actually want to do a Romeo mod on the LA6508, and the reason for that is because the Dragon Mechacon in this machine is more or less identical to what you'll find in a V910, which of course had a fairly big problem of blowing laser coils. So if we Romeo mod that IC, which we'll be doing in a future episode, then we should be able to ensure that that doesn't happen to our PSX. There are quite a few posts around with people with PSXs that seem to claim that swapping in KHS400Cs from alternate sources doesn't really tend to work, and I think the reason for that, I'm sure some of it's probably bad component supply and things of that nature, but I think a big part of that is because the LA6508 has actually gone out and died and fried the coils. And as anybody who has worked on a V910 PS2 before will know, if that chip does fail and it does blow the laser coils, as soon as you insert a new laser without replacing that IC, it will do the same to the new laser. So I think that could be a big part of why those KHS400C lasers don't tend to work on some machines after they've been replaced. So in order to avoid any drama of that nature, we'll Romeo mod the LA6508 IC, but we'll do that in a future video. So in conclusion then, we've not had a bad run there, have we? So we've made sure that our machine starts up. It does. Everything works fine there. We've made sure our Infinity mod works correctly, and it does. And we've also managed to confirm that our KHS400C laser for the very first time works absolutely fine. There may be or may not be a need to tweak that CD pot. We'll have to test that in a future episode. But for now, we know our next course of action is going to be 1. Do the Romeo mod to the LA6508, and also to replace that burner laser. So those will be our next jobs, and they'll be coming up in the next part. So thank you for watching today, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you've enjoyed this and you found it useful. If you have, then please hit that thumbs up. It really helps in liking the videos, and it would mean a lot to me if you could do that. If this is of interest to you, then of course go back and check the PSX playlist. The link is in the description below if you've missed anything. And of course, if you want to keep abreast of any future episodes, then feel free to hit that subscribe button and ding the bell to be notified when we upload again. So I will leave you for now, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you next week on another video, and I'm not sure what it'll be yet, whether it'll be more PSX or one of the other little things I've got on the burner. I've also got a new piece of equipment to be trying out, which I'm really excited to have a go with, and of course I'll bring you a video on that as well. You'll have to wait and see what that is. So I will see you, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you'll have a good weekend, well, what's left of it anyway, and I'll see you soon.
like me.